5 states hold primaries Tuesday, and we have new CBS Battleground Tracker numbers in 3 of them. Among Republicans in Florida, home state Senator Marco Rubio is running third at 21%, behind Donald Trump, who is at the top with 44%, and Ted Cruz, who is in second with 24%. John Kasich is far behind with 9% support, but in his home state of Ohio, John Kasich is tied with Donald Trump at 33%. Ted Cruz is behind them at 27%. Marco Rubio is far down at 5%. In Illinois, Donald Trump on top at 38%, with Ted Cruz right behind him at 34%. John Kasich comes in at 16% and Marco Rubio at 11%. And now to the Democratic race. The CBS News Battleground Tracker has Hillary Clinton up almost 30 points over Bernie Sanders in Florida. In Ohio, the former Secretary of State is at 52% compared to Senator Sanders at 43%. Illinois shows a much tighter race. Senator Sanders is up 2 points over Secretary Clinton, 48 to 46. Joining us now is CBS News Director of Elections, Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, we're going to try and map out the next week. Let's start first. One thing I found interesting in the poll was John Kasich challenging Trump in Ohio, doing much better there than Rubio in his home state of Florida. Why is that?
Yeah, one's a home state advantage, one may be a disadvantage. Now, in Ohio, people say the economy is good, and Kasich has sky-high approval ratings as governor, so that's an advantage. But comparably, in Florida, Rubio's approval ratings as a senator are mixed, even among Republicans, and he's got lower numbers than the rest of the candidates on being prepared to be president, and that's essentially the difference.
All right. Let's talk about Ohio and Florida. Big winner-take-all states next week. Let's go through some of the scenarios here. It seems like, for the moment, given where Donald Trump has been, the question is he going to get enough delegates to get the nomination, or will he go to the convention with maybe a lead in the delegates, but he will have been stopped from getting that magic number? So let's walk through some of the scenarios. First, in Ohio and Florida, let's say Trump wins both of them. What's next?
I think he becomes all but inevitable, because all he would have to do from there, with the delegate lead in hand, coming out of Tuesday, is keep winning and keep winning delegates at the same pace at which he has been. And I think the map ahead actually favors him in his ability to do that, because you look at the states coming up and they have more of the kind of voters that Donald Trump has already been winning. You get your blue-collar Republicans, you've got your suburban Republicans. He's been doing well with all those groups, and fewer of the kind of voters in the kind of areas that Ted Cruz has been winning. Fewer agricultural areas, fewer rural areas. So we're headed through the Northeast. We're headed through the West, Pennsylvania, New York, etc. That should advantage Trump in being able to keep that pace.
And if he wins those 2 states, it will suggest that all these attacks against him, that they're just not working, and so they'd be unlikely to just suddenly work in the remaining states.
Yeah.
Let's now look at the beginning of glimmers of hope, which is to say Trump loses one of those 2 states. What does it look like then if he only wins one of those 2 big states?
I think that is a glimmer of hope for the folks trying to catch him, but it depends also who he loses to. So if he loses to Kasich in Ohio, and obviously that's a very competitive race, will it be seen as, well, that's a one-off, that's a home state win for Kasich, but where else does he go? And then Kasich is still trailing him in delegates. And, if Rubio happens to catch him in Florida, same thing. Rubio is going to be behind him in delegates and probably will be coming out of Tuesday. So the other thing here, John, is that the rules going forward from these states actually advantage the winner to an even greater degree than they already have. So they hand out more winner-take-all delegates even by region or district. And so the difference between the leading candidate and the trailing candidates actually historically tends to open up even more.
So in that case, though, if Trump only won one of those 2 states, he would have to do a little bit better than he's already doing to get the magic number?
He'd have to pick up the pace a little bit. But just a little bit, because he'd keep that lead. Now, if he does, and he heads into places like Pennsylvania, like New York and those other states, and then tries to build on that lead, he wouldn't get there quickly, we should say. He wouldn't clinch, and it might go deep into May, but he would still be on a trajectory to get there.
All right, quickly, he loses both. What happens then?
Yeah, he loses both, and that's a lot of hope for people who want want to stop him and try to stop him at the convention, I think. But there is at least one advantage out of this, is that voters do tend to try to wrap things up as we get deep into the process, do tend to try to consolidate behind a front runner. But if he loses both, then some of that luster of being a winner certainly comes off, and he certainly has a tougher road ahead because, and let's not forget, the other states voting, the North Carolina, the Missouri, right? If Ted Cruz were to cherry pick a couple of those, now Cruz could make up some of the difference.
Because Cruz is the closest to him in delegates at the moment.
Because Cruz is closest in delegates. So let's not forget those, and they actually have more delegates in total. It's just that we're focusing on Ohio and Florida, rightly, because they're the big winner-take-all prizes. But there's a lot more delegates out there, so watch for Cruz to try and at least cut into that Trump lead, and then if Trump does happen to drop both Ohio and Florida, now we get competitive. Now we could see this thing go deep into June, maybe to the convention.
All right. Well, we'll be asking you all the way along the way, Anthony. Thanks so much for helping us out on that.
Thanks.
And we'll be right back.